Exodus 20, rethinking the Ten Commandments. And I'm calling it rethinking the Ten Commandments because I know I've interpreted these in a certain way for most of my Christian life, and I'm seeing it a little differently now. I'm seeing it in a way that's more consistent with the grace of God and how I understand his character. And so as we get started, the word commandment, a little participation here. And don't overthink this. Like, don't think about this with your good, pious Sunday mind. Think of this of your Monday morning mind, all right, for a second. The word commandment, negative or positive connotation to that? Does it feel like the tone of the word commandment, does it feel positive or negative to you? How many would say negative? Okay. Would any of you say positive? The word commandment, does it feel positive to you? Just your gut reaction to it. I don't think, maybe for some of you it might, but for most, probably feels negative. Has to do with how we understand the word, and I think we get this sense that it's almost oppressive. And yet, as we see this section in light of the character of God, the consistency of who God is and how he operates and how he treats his people, we realize that he's not inconsistent, or he doesn't have a split personality. He's not seeking to torture us or looking for any opportunity to pummel us, but rather is gracious. His desire is to pursue us and to liberate us, to rescue us from ourselves. And so as we move through the commandments, and this first one this morning will be commandment number 1. I will move through one by one through the 10. We'll see these are God's way of pursuing us, okay? So when Paul said in the New Testament that the letter kills, or his way of saying the law kills, and he's referencing the 10 commandments there, the law kills. When he says that, it must be that he means it reveals us to be dead. It's leading us to life. It's leading us back to God. It's leading us to Christ and his greatness. But that begins with revealing us to be dead. It reveals how much we need God. Like everything else God has communicated in this book, it's not about us learning how to shape up or get it right or provide spiritual life for ourselves, but rather it's about a God who is in pursuit of us, seeking to give us life, seeking to reestablish relationship with us, seeking to give us himself. And it's the same when it comes to the 10 Commandments. This is God in pursuit of his people. For their good back then, for our good today. So read verses 1 through 3 of Exodus 20 with me, all right? Then God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. So I want you to think about this. God says, have no other gods before me. If someone said that to you, if some other human being said that to you, hey, I don't want you to have anybody else before me. I want to be first in your life. I want to be exceptional. No one besides me. You probably wouldn't respond well to that. I mean, there's ways in which relationally, this is part of relationships. I mean, in terms of like, you think of like romantic relationships, and there's an exclusivity to that. And at some point, you imply that. You don't just come out and say it unless you're a jerk. You don't just say, hey, I want to be first in your life. But you have other ways of getting at that. But if you just said it, if you said it even to someone close to you, and you said it more than once, and you said it boldly and passionately, they probably wouldn't respond well to that. I mean, if someone demands that kind of priority in your life, I mean, that's strange. If you went up to a stranger and said, hey, you know what, I want to be first in your life. I demand that place in your life. That's just weird and offensive. And the response wouldn't be good. And that's what God's saying here. No other gods before me. Literally, There will not be for you other gods before, in the Hebrew, it's before my face. You won't have any other gods in my face. Interesting. The Greek translation of the Old Testament, there will not be gods for you other than me, except me. And you've heard it translated, besides me. No other gods. And we said for us to say something like this to another human being is extremely offensive. And yet God says this to all of us within a context of him having proven himself. I mean, the way he even begins, before he starts to lay out these commandments, it says, God spoke all these words. Verse 2, I am the Lord your God. And he uses his personal name. I am Yahweh your God. I am the God who was and is and always will be. I am the God who has proven my love for you. I am the God, and he specifically mentions, who brought you out of the house of slavery. I am the God who is more committed to your freedom, Israelites, than you are. I am the God who is more committed to your freedom, fill in your name here, than you are. The God who has your best interest at heart better than you do. And then he says, you're to have no other gods before me. So think back to the beginning with Adam and Eve, when they went after that forbidden fruit. A big part of it was their desire to be like who? Like God. And ever since, this is what we're dealing with within ourselves and our own minds. This desire to be like God. This implicit trust in ourselves. Here's what's interesting. He doesn't say you shouldn't attempt to be God. That's already sort of established. He knows human condition. He says, you shall have no other God. So here's what's interesting about this. It's one of the many proofs that we are terrible at being God. And here's one reason. Because we are not self-sufficient. As much as we'd like to think we are not independent. We are dependent. We are needy. So here's an illustration of it. NBA playoffs are on. I don't really watch the NBA much anymore. Kind of lost my taste for it in a way. But used to be really into it growing up. And many years ago, mid-90s, the Chicago Bulls were in the NBA Finals playing against the Utah Jazz. And there was the famous Michael Jordan flu game. You ever heard of the flu game? Where he played incredibly well while having the flu. Night before the game, he was up throwing up and super sick, super weak. And he goes out there and still puts up, I think, 30 plus points. Amazing game. And I mean, I was back in that day, of course, like Michael Jordan. How could you not? The guy was incredible. And just admired his ability. And what people tend to think about when they think about the flu game is how amazing it is that for a few hours he performed at such a high level, though at the end of the game he basically collapsed. So they think about how remarkable his ability was shown off there. But if you think about it from sort of zoom out a little bit, the night before he's throwing up all night. He couldn't have been playing the game during those hours. It just so happened that the game fell at a time where he was starting to recover. After the game, he fell apart. All illustrations of the guy's mortal. The whole game, he's hydrating, drinking Gatorade and whatever else. Needy. Little side note, I read an article years ago about his little cohort, his group of friends and security people that he travels with everywhere he goes. And with that group, they all have these nicknames. And you know what his nickname is in that group? Yahweh. It's his nickname. I mean, he's an impressive dude, no doubt about it. Guy's got, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars probably. Human being. Still needed Gatorade and water. Without it, he'll die. Return to the dust from which he came. So we're in a sense, trying to be God, kind of playing at that, but yet turning to other gods because we need. So back then it was the Israelites following after the gods of the pagans, gods of, fertility, and the gods that would bless their crops and gods that would give them military protection. And military strength. And the Israelites kept following those gods, pursuing those gods, thinking they could get the good life for themselves by doing the same thing. And today we have our ways of doing that, of pursuing the good life, of chasing the gods of our making, the gods of our culture. And God knows this is our default mode, and He knows that it gets us nowhere, and He knows that to violate the first commandment, you shall have no other gods besides me, is to commit suicide. It's suicide. It's in a way, it's different than suicide. The fact that you do violate it, I do violate it, shows us to be dead. That's what death is. It's living as if I'm God and trying to find all these other gods to provide for me what I think I need. God says that's death. So this is interesting. A while back, a friend of mine said, hey, check out this American thinker, writer, is like an award-winning writer. His name is David Foster Wallace, and I should say he passed away, actually committed suicide at the young age of 45 years ago. But award-winning writer, university professor, David Foster Wallace. And this is what he said. I want you to listen to what he said about worship. This is a guy, probably agnostic, I would say. But listen to his insight about worship. He said, everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. Never feel that you have enough to be satisfied. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. Worship power, you will end up feeling weak and afraid. And you'll need ever more power over others to numb you to your own fear. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart, you will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out. But the insidious thing about these forms of worship is they're unconscious. They are default settings. That's some great insight right there to the human condition, right? Where worship gets us. The emptiness of it all, the enslavement of it all, the futility of it all. Sometime look up his talk. It's on YouTube. You can Google it and find it. I think it's called This is Water, David Foster Wallace. And just listen to what he says for about 20 minutes, I think. It was a university commencement speech. It's great insight. And here we have a God who knows more clearly than we do just how needy we are and how foolish it is for us to try to be God and for us to pick other gods over Him, who is pursuing us. He was pursuing them back then. He was in pursuit of His people when Jesus came and lived here, and He's pursuing us today. Turn with me to Jeremiah 2. I want to show you this passage we talked about in the men's meeting last week. I think Josh brought this up. God kind of pleading with His people to see Him as valuable. Jeremiah 2, verse 11 through 13. Has a nation changed gods when they were not gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which does not profit. Be appalled, O heavens, at this, and shudder. Be very desolate, declares the Lord, for my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, to hew for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Vivid imagery there. He says, look, my people have picked these broken containers. You're drinking from and the water is leaking out the bottom. There's no thirst quenching potential there. You're going to run out. You're going to die of thirst. And he says, be shocked that you humans make this exchange, this tragic exchange all the time, exchanging my value for this lesser value of things I've made, things that can never satisfy you, things that can never secure you. to break the first commandment is to commit suicide. It's to reveal ourselves to be spiritually dead. And we all do it, and we do it in countless ways. With what we demand from other people, what we want to get out of our life circumstances, ways that we go after satisfaction and security, a sense of significance for our lives, and all the pursuits and all the effort and all the toil to try to get for ourselves. All a result of rejecting God personally, going our own way, doing our own thing, trusting in ourselves and our perspective and thinking we know best, and so on. So I'm going to wrap it up here soon, but think about this for a moment, all right? I mean, who has your best interest at heart better than you? I mean, who knows better than you do what's good for you, for your life? What is of value? Who knows better than you what you want, what you need? I mean, if you're honest, most of the time, by default, you're operating as if you know best what's good for you. What is worth your attention, your affection? Most of the time, and that's the same for me. And when God says, have no other gods before me, He is lovingly coming to people who, by a miracle of His grace, have enough insight to say, you know what? Maybe I don't know what the heck I'm doing after all. Maybe I'm not that good at being God of my life. Maybe my perspective, which I trust implicitly, is actually not trustworthy. The Ten Commandments, beginning with this first foundational commandment of have no other gods before me, I mean, is God's pursuit of you, saying, it's the same thing as Jeremiah 2. Hey, listen, be appalled by the way your thinking naturally works itself out, the direction it takes you. I mean, look around. Here's God's pursuit. So I said he pursued back then His people, the Israelites, when Jesus came and lived in our place and lived as God with no other gods, which itself is a fascinating concept. He lived as a human being. He's God, puts His Father above everyone and everything else, and lives as a result of that a life of spiritual vitality and love and service and filled with gratitude and all those amazing things in His substitutionary work on our behalf. That is God pursuing, providing, and now today He's pointing us back over and over and over to that provision, because we, in our rejection of Him, in our desire to be like God and to go after other gods to provide for us what we think we need, we all are in this state of death, and there's no way we could ever get back to life. And we have a God who comes and gives it to us through Jesus. He gives us life. He gives it to people who can't naturally do anything other than pick a gazillion other gods. One of the reformers said the human heart is like an idol factory. It just cranks out new ones. We say, sometimes people in the counseling office say, well, I get it. I put this before God. And so I'm going to kind of try to work on this thing, okay? And I think of the game, remember the whack-a-mole game at the arcades where the little head comes up, and you're like, boom, 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 right? It's like, okay, you get that one, and this one comes over here, you get that one, this one. Like, look, you can't, this is what the human heart does. Until we're dead, it's going to keep doing this. New ones. I value this, I value that, I want this, I want that, I got to have this, I got to have that. It's just natural. God loves us enough. He sees us in that death spiral, as it were, and comes and says, hey, here's the truth. The truth is, I know better than you know what's good for you. And it is best for you for me to be first in your life. That is life for you. And I know you'd never choose it. And so I'm coming to give it to you anyway. And I sent my Son to live in your place. to come for you, to rescue you, to redeem you, to reconcile you to myself, to transfer you from the domain of darkness to the kingdom of the beloved Son, right? From you were dead in trespasses and sins, and I have made you alive. And your being alive has nothing to do with what you contributed and how you fixed the problem and how you conquered your idolatry. It's not the way it works. It's gift, it's grace, it's God persuading you. So just in closing here, how does he persuade us? I mean, probably, I don't know, countless ways that he does it, but one to leave you with is as you go throughout your life doing the same thing that I do, chasing after this, that, and the other thing. Oh, squirrel, you know that thing? Like, oh, yeah, it's that. Oh, that now. Oh, this, right? Whatever it is. Not if, but when it fails to satisfy you, when you fail to feel the security in that relationship that you desperately want to feel, when it fails to exhilarate you, I mean, sometimes these pursuits, I mean, they feel good for a while. They have a little something, a little taste or something that's good that we keep chasing. That's what keeps us going. But I mean, when it just leaves you just empty, when you realize this is just hopeless or fruitless or unsatisfying or dark or filthy or I feel guilty. I mean, even that is God coming for you. All these different ways saying, hey, I'm here. I love you. I know what's best for you. I'm your creator. Everything has its existence wrapped up in, dependent upon its connection with me. You live when I'm exalted, when I'm first, you live. You're free. You're filled. You're fulfilled. Pick your New Testament word. You're alive. And when you're in your pursuit, all we like sheep have gone astray, right? When you're in your straying pursuit and you find yourself to feel lost, feel empty, discouraged, disappointed, stuck in a place of anger or anxiety or greed that's starting to feel oppressive like chains, God says, hey, remember what I did for you. Remember that I've provided fully for you to know that you're forgiven. You're covered. Life is a gift. It's a gift given to those who perpetually pick other gods, despite that fact. And we'll enjoy this gift forever. And someday on the other side, which is going to be amazing. Can't even imagine what this is going to be like, really, to just be free of all those enticements. I mean, the countless ways that I look to things and people and experiences to be for me what only God himself could ever be. To finally experience what Paul says in Romans 11 when he says, from him, through him, and to him are all things. To him belongs the glory forever. When we're home, we're going to know that fully. We're going to know him even as we are known by him. In the meantime, we have a God who keeps pursuing you. Is that amazing? Is that awesome? It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So we can be thankful that he says, hey, have no other gods before me. That's not an oppressive commandment meant to harm you. That is for your healing and for mine. And I hope by a miracle, we can believe that. And at least for a few moments, reject that part of our brain that says, no, this way. No, that can't be it. No. That the gospel would just silence the lie with the truth that sets free. Let's pray. God, thank you for your word, and thank you for inviting us to look at this passage through the lenses of your gospel, to see it as completely consistent with your gracious character. God, we so naturally impose upon these passages our understanding of things, how we view commandments, how we use commandments to control and manipulate people, to enslave people. And yet you are here for our freedom, to get us to Christ, to see our lost state in our lives, to get a little sense of how stuck we are in our lives, and then to hear the truth. God who loves us, you have our best interest at heart better than we do. You know better. You're good. So thank you for Christ, the greatest expression, the gateway through which we start to see your heart. And we begin to see you as good and trustworthy and reliable. Thank you for your relentless pursuit of us. Thank you for the ways that our idolatry fails us, to point us back to yourself as the true God, the life giver, the true source of love and everything that's of real value. Thank you for our time this morning. Thank you for our group. Be with us even as we talk over these things a bit. In Christ's name, amen.